Fortunately,
Action.
I don't need any of the sound sync. It's already done.
Action.
Action.
Woo!
Action Jackson, here we are. Another fun episode of Bad Beard's podcast. I am Bad Beard, Sam Schneider, and we are still at Barber.
Still at Barber.
Still at Barber at Small Bore, and I am sitting with none other than Zach Gray. And it's not just any guest, friends. This is family. This is my first familial guest.
Familial.
Familial.
Yeah,
that's what
right.
you'd say.
That would, I mean, yeah, technically.
Well, so what would you call...
you are now, right? Because, like, you know, it's a weird familial connection, though.
Yeah.
This is one of those...
I don't know if it has
like,
a title.
You're at a barbecue, you're talking to somebody, and you're like, oh, yeah, it's my wife's cousin's husband. Like,
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
That's where we're at.
That's what you would say. That's what I would say.
This is my wife's
cousin's
husband.
And it's funny because, like, you are that to me, and I am that to you. It goes both ways.
Hey, look at us.
You know, this is a bi-familial relationship.
Whoa, dude. It's 2024, though, so I guess, you know.
We made it, dude. We're doing it. We're doing it.
So,
I don't know what to do with my hands. I just keep doing...
No, please. You can
every
just
time.
shock her.
Hell yeah, dude. Just hang out, man.
The fun thing about Zach Gray is not specific to our connection.
Yeah.
I would say, and it's not equally the most exciting thing about you. However, one thing I find fascinating about you is your profession. And so it's not that I like to sit and talk to people about their professions and that's all that they are.
Yeah.
However, you are unique. You're a unique New York.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
You know, there's some uniqueness to it. It's different. I'll say that.
So tell our friends at home what it is you do.
Yeah, I mean, applied mathematician. I work in, a big lab. Work with a bunch of scientists and physicists, and this is like it's not necessarily a profession that I tried to get into. It's not like I was younger and I was like, I'm going to be a mathematician when I grow up.
And for the people at home that are not following along, he is a full-on professional mathematician. You're a pro mather.
Yeah, pro mathin'. That's why I was out here, right? So that's why this is kind of what brought me out to the Atlanta area, and then
in town for a convention.
That's right. We have these conferences and mathematicians from all over the world. So people that I know from Italy and Germany and France and
just smart motherfuckers.
Yeah, they all come out. Hong Kong, they all come out. We all talk about how we're working on a variety of problems in imaging science and computational science, data science.
Is it a lot of theoretical stuff? Is it?
It's a really solid mix. I mean, I definitely mostly participate in conversations with a group of individuals that do theory, right? So there's so many different theoretical concepts to throw at so many different interesting problems, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, certainly in the context of imaging, we want to understand like how the planet is changing, and we have the opportunity to observe the planet from satellites. So how can we use that kind of imaging?
So you're doing data points and trying to forecast?
Yeah, I do. I mean, my responsibility is primarily to understand and measure shape, which is like this really interesting concept. It's very foreign in the sense that like we think about like a standard kind of calculus where addition and subtraction makes sense.
Right.
But when you start to talk about a collection and space of shapes, and you start to introduce like a means of deforming those shapes, it's no longer you no longer have the ability to do addition and subtraction. I can't take two shapes and add them together and get a new shape, right?
Yeah.
Like if I took an outline of an elephant and I add that to a circle, it's totally meaningless, right? So but you can deform one of those curves into the other. So there's a very complicated kind of calculus going on in the background.
Oh my God, dude!
How can we answer questions like this?
I understood I know what an elephant is.
Yeah.
I theoretically understand what you're saying. Like I can kind of like contextually like grasp your what you're saying.
Yeah,
the concepts. Right. But it's just so fascinating to me that the level of because math is perfect, right? It's like you can't just fudge it.
Well, right. So this is like the idea of the science that we study, because it is truly like a science and an art. And I like to say that like applied math is principally the art of assigning language to logic.
Okay.
And that's the idea, is that mostly my job entails explanation to other people that aren't well versed in this language.
So you make math make sense.
Right. For the person that needs to solve a problem.
Right.
And like not only just for people that need to like solve a really difficult physics problem, but like for everyday shit, like everyday life. We have economic problems, we have social problems, we have all these interesting questions about AI and what's happening in that realm, and we have such a creative intuition as like just a human species, right? What we do, but math kind of grounds us in the sense that it is a check to our own intuition. Like it is, can you provably say something definitively about how this or that works in this or that environment?
Yeah.
So that's really what it boils down to is, and a lot of times our intuition breaks down. So there's tons of really interesting examples of when you start to, for instance, just deal with data that you've measured and it's maybe high dimensional. So we use dimension in a context that's very foreign to most people. We live in like 3D. That's what we think about. But
I'm more of a 4D dude, but sure, go ahead.
Yeah, right. You want to include time? That'll work as well.
I'm a big spatial guy.
Yeah. But what do we do when we have lots of data, right? Like, and we measure a lot of things simultaneously. Well, now you have all these extra factors. So typically people count the number of factors that go into, for instance, designing a motorcycle.
Right.
Creating some other thing that's important to them. They count the number of combinations that might go into that. This is really the consideration of dimensionality. We try to reduce that dimensionality, we try to understand it, but math doesn't really play nice in these high-dimensional systems. So, fundamentally, we check people's intuition, and we assign language to logical thinking. But that's it.
I heard something just fuzzle outside. What do you think that was?
That was the Solara blowing away. It's just...
All right. Well, I think I actually should check that. Stand by. This will be, you're going to be Zach opening the door again in a moment.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I already did it. A solid interruption. Check it out.
That's fine, that's fine.
Everything's good out there.
No! It's just the boys leaving in their vans, slamming their doors.
Oh! That's a shame. I'm glad it wasn't the Solara.
No, it was much better current. So I have a question.
All right, I've got answers. Well, sometimes I've got answers. Oh, shit.
Crease. Not bad.
Yeah, stick her in there.
No, I want it. On.
Ow.
Handsome fella.
I don't know about that. My hair's, look at his hair. These locks.
I love that
The
straw.
humidity. It's just, it gets me.
Before we were so rudely interrupted.
By
Holy
the Solara.
smokes,
By
Solara.
the Solara.
Calm down.
God, get your fucking muddy mitts off. All right, we're here. We're
So, as you described with what you do, and you make sense out of math and explanation of it, and then also to what it's a fact checker. Like it keeps us honest, right? Math.
Yeah.
Is there a world where the math is so high level that you can just sell an idea of such that, like, this is what I posit to be a truth, that you just, one of these big equations that you can't totally understand or solve, that you go, that guy's pretty close, so we're just going to go with his for a while, and then all of a sudden it's been refuted or...
Yeah, so, like, I guess in math, there are often, like, these conjectures, and people will kind of posit a guess, and part of their intuition and understanding is applied to what they think is a solution, what they suspect is the right answer. So to some extent there's like some guidance there, but I got to be honest, it's an incredibly kind of creative discipline, much in the way that many of the arts are. When you're thinking,
what do you mean, Zach?
When you're thinking about solving a problem, there isn't structure or guideline to kind of approaching it in the same way that, like, somebody who's going to create a beautiful painting walks up to an empty canvas. Like, that's the idea.
So there's no one way to get to the solution?
No, not at all. And, like, in fact, there are so many kind of diverse disciplines in mathematics. Like, you have algebraic topologists, algebraic geometers, differential geometers, people who study numerical analysis, people who just do bread and butter kind of functional analysis. And applied math is kind of like a big conglomeration of all of that. And so if you're studying topology or geometry or algebras, abstract algebras, they're completely different languages, right?
Yeah.
So like you can approach any one problem, for instance, in data science, from that lens or through that lens and get totally different perspective,
Yeah.
totally different interpretation, which is honestly one of the only things that we can offer anymore, because proof-based things and these kinds of mechanisms have almost been like automated, you know?
Got it.
So there is as much a pressure on us. Modeling through a kind of applied math standpoint is kind of being replaced. AI has done a lot to kind of is ramping up in that sense.
Well, and so to interject, it's interesting because as you described, I didn't know before meeting you that there was such a need and desire and all things considered for your position in math. Because from my standpoint, it was like, you know, the teacher says, like, you know, you're not going to be able to carry a calculator in your pocket the rest of your life because the math I consider, you know, is calculable with a calculator.
Yeah.
Versus what you do. And so then when I understood that to be a thing, and then, you know, you talk NIST and all these other things, then I'm like, oh, shit. And so then now as it evolves further into, you know, the world of AI and automation, and then how you find still your same pursuit of contextualizing these conundrums, it just blows my friggin' mind in such a way that I think is fantastic. And so further still, at what grade do you go, oh my God, I'm so good at math, I should be a mathematician? Or, you know what I've never found is the creativity in math. When did that click for you that, like, you know, it was so sexy to fucking 2 + 2 = 4?
Right. Well, right. And you talk a lot about kind of like this mechanistic arithmetic that we're so accustomed to. Like, that's when we think about math, people are like, oh yeah, what's 2 + 2?
Yeah.
You know, that's what you do all day. And it's like, no. And it's like, and then other people be like, oh, you just sit in a room and do like integration all day. It's like, well, yes and no, right? No, I'm not doing like calculus all the time. And yes, we'll never always have this idea that we'll never have a calculator. So that's bullshit.
Mm.
We have new tools that help us with this process. Math is about like just theoretical interpretation, right? It's about checking our intuition against actual logical decision making, and doing that in a way that's principled, because theory is truly what drives a notion of trustworthiness. Like that's it. If you want something to be trustworthy, then I certainly hope that you can prove to me.
It's nightclub vibes right now. Yeah, what's wrong with it?
No, I certainly hope that you can prove to me that the model will converge, is stable, so that when I'm in an environment where, you know, it's volatile, you know, I can trust it. My point is like, your point in question was, how do you get interested in anything like that, right? It's certainly not what I thought I'd be doing.
Well, and give me the breakdown. It was like, well, I was in 11th grade.
Right. So it starts in as early as even elementary school.
Yeah.
And I was awful at math. I hated it.
Really?
Oh, yeah. This was a subject being taught to me in a way by a group of people, and I just didn't understand. They wanted me to do the arithmetic, and that's what we were doing, right? We're studying, like, I did long division, multiplication tables.
Right.
And they're essentially just teaching you this concept of memorization.
Right.
I mean, that's how we were taught math. It's like, here are your multiplication tables. Now you need to remember all your multiplication, 3 times 3, 8 times 8, all this shit, right? But they don't teach it to you in a kind of algebraic way where it's like, think about what we're doing here and what the operation of multiplication represents. It actually just represents taking this sum a multiple of times, right? So I was so divorced from that because I wanted to think about it kind of more fundamentally. So I was never really good at math growing up. That was never a thing.
Well, so then like you're you know, doing your math minutes, you're learning and memorizing, and then all of a sudden you go, all right, you know, ding dong teacher's saying X, Y, Z. You're like, that's not it.
There are other ways to like write this down.
And you were seeing that.
And I was like, well, fuck all this. Like, I'm gonna I don't need to be particularly good at this. And then I was like, well, I want to fly planes, right? I wanted to be a pilot.
Right.
And you know, you watch Top Gun. I watched Top Gun with my brother, and my grandfather was a fighter pilot. And they're like, feel the need. The need for speed. And I'm like, fuck yeah, dude, I feel the need.
Yeah.
Like, get me in the seat.
6 times 6.
Fuck yeah, I know it's 36, bro. I can fly this jet real fast.
Yeah.
So, like, that's, like, I'm geared up. Like, I'm like, all right, I want to be a fucking fighter pilot. My parents are like, all right, cool. Like, if that's what you want to do, then fucking do it.
Right.
But if you're going to do it, you got to be good at math and science. And they're like, so change your mindset. Because, like, at the beginning of high school, you know, I'm like skater punk. I'm smoking cigarettes, smoking whatever else, hanging out with people.
Devil's lettuce.
Not me, dude. Not me and the devil's lettuce. I don't do that. And then we're going to the skate park. We're being like reckless, right? Like they can see me. I'm falling into a different path in life. They're like, well, you know, put your focus on science. You need to put your focus on math. As soon as I buckle down to it again, come like high school, now it's like, oh, this is actually kind of fun. This is interesting. I can see myself being good at this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like puzzles. You're provided all these little puzzles, and by that time, once you're in like high school, you begin to understand that like math is less about doing it in the mechanistic way that we've been taught through memorization to simply act like a calculator, and you learn, oh wow, this is actually like applying ideas. You approach a solution to a problem in a very creative way, and when you solve it, it's like you've made something. The same way you've made a machine, you've made some formal proof, and that proof represents a kind of logic encoded in an algebra. And that started to get like really interesting, and I was like, oh shit, you can use this to design some of the coolest machines on the planet.
Yeah.
You can design a jet engine with this. You can design AI with this. You can do so many interesting things with these principles. And it is like a blank canvas. So that's really where it all started, right? I wanted to be this one thing, and of course, I'm not particularly good with authority, so the whole fighter pilot trajectory ended for me. But I was, and it accelerated in college. I got better and better at the math, did my master's degree, and then finally did my PhD during the master's degree process. And when I was working for an aerospace company, we were doing design, we were doing uncertainty quantification, we were doing optimization. It was just enthralling. It was like, it felt like pure creation.
And you fell into it, and you were just like eating it up, and it was just everything was like, what's that movie, Limitless?
Yeah.
You know, that like meme where it's like all the like the equations are happening around his head as he just like whimsically looks into the distance. Like, was that your experience where you're like, I see the future?
God, I wish it was something so
well, as
inspirational, right? Like where it felt like genuine inspiration, but it was honestly more like curiosity. It was like, it's less the this person with like the equations flying around their head, and it's more so like this person that's like, wow, I don't understand that, but I understand the power of it, and I'm gonna research it, I'm gonna read it, I'm gonna try to understand it, I'm gonna try to apply it. And when you have those small successes, you know, this is like that natural learning process too, though. The same way that like if you've got a bike in front of you and you don't know nothing about it, and you're looking at it and you're like, well, I know what I want to make it look like. You know, this thing that is a starting point is essentially a blank canvas. I want to make it something, but I got to learn about it. And as you learn more and you figure out these tricks and you know these new things start to come to you, and you're like, oh, well, I could do this and that.
Well, so I would say the same way I look at people, that curiosity is what, you know, brings us into this trailer.
Yeah, right.
Is the way that I see you into building your bikes, and then equally what has brought you into the space of math. My experience with math was similar but different. Similar in the sense that like I wasn't good at it. And then when I got to that stage, geometry came easy to me.
Yeah.
And that was interesting when, like, because that was like a visual representation of my brain. I'm a big visual guy. That's how I learned. But then with math, when it became more algebraic, it was that rote memorization that just did not work for how I operate. And very quickly, it was not a puzzle. It was a puzzle, but none of the pieces were cut for the right, you know, shape.
Right.
And so, as you described it, I go, man, I could appreciate that if that was the feeling or the reality. Like, all the pieces are here. I know what all these pieces are, and I can see how they fit together.
That's right.
But without that understanding of it, and equally without the tools to be able to put that puzzle together, it became a downhill, you know, it's still the uphill climb or whatever it is or whatever. These fine soft Vana shirts, we love them, but they're
They kind of look at
a little droopy with that
a
weight.
little droopy there.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, it's because it's so soft. It's a nice blank. They use good
But
material.
I'm not soft. Unlike
You're not
this.
soft. No, you're not blank either.
Well, you can be. I'm
You're a little
both,
gray.
I'm both blank and soft. This is you can be all of these things. That's for sure. No, but I can relate to what you're saying, right? Like, so much of like our relationship with math. Like, I always talk to people and I'm like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, if I don't lie to them and tell them
When you do lie, what do you say?
Sometimes I tell them I run a gas station because I just don't even want to get into the fucking conversation.
Yeah, it's a Buc-ee's. I run a Buc-ee's. They're like, "Whoa, that's so cool!"
Yeah, you know, this squirrel thing. It's a
Yeah.
beaver, people. I know it's a beaver.
we figured it out.
We figured it out. We figured that out. But yeah, no, I can relate to the like immediately, right? There's a relatable experience there where they're like, they obviously had this like traumatic relationship where they're just like, I'm so bad at math.
That's appropriate. Like, traumatic is the right response because you were reminded daily that you're stupid.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh no, it's like I don't get it, and like as much as I want to, it's not available for me to understand.
Right. And that's why I like this anecdote, right? Is that like math shouldn't be treated as this like mechanical thing that there's memorization, and like your ability to memorize multiplication tables is not impressive to anybody, right? Like, what's impressive is your ability to learn a new language, and this is a language of logic. So that's why I like the anecdote of like applied math is principally about simply the art of applying and assigning a language to logic. That's what it's all about.
Has there been an experience where, whether it's one of these conferences you go to or a paper that you've authored or whatever, that the language of math is the common language between you and someone that does not speak English?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like,
what does
all
that
the
look
time,
like?
right? Like, so it's so difficult for us to just like communicate. You know, it's just like a French colleague or an Italian colleague, and like have no idea. But as soon as we start talking about like the problem we're working on, like they resonate with these ideas, and you can tell that there's like a common ground there about how we think about a problem, and like that's really exciting and really cool. This is even to the point where, like, of course, you go to these conferences and yeah, you have some math beers, and math beers are the best beers, right?
Tell us about math beers.
Math beers
Are these math beers? These aren't math beers.
Yeah, absolutely, these are math beers. We're talking about math,
Fuck
having
yeah.
beers. But this is like the best thing is like you go to these things and you share these ideas, because we all work in kind of like not in isolation, right? But we work separately from one another. You come to these conferences, a big confluence of like ideas and people, and you go to the topics and abstracts that sound interesting. You listen to somebody and they're like, start talking about the idea, and it's something you never thought of before. It's somebody else's like genuine creativity, just like coming at you full force, and it's communicated to you in a form of mathematics that's so relatable. And then like afterwards, it's like this excitement. It's literally like being at the motorcycle show, and you're like, damn, that dude has a 69 slab side that's like super tight. He's got this narrow front end. He's got these Flanders styles bars on it. Like, I love that. I love everything about this. I can like that resonates with me. It's the same thing when I'm like at like a math conference. It's like somebody starts talking about their application of maximum mean discrepancy or how they're doing a shape analysis, and I'm just like, yes, this makes sense. And they speak hardly a lick of English, right? Like, it's very broken.
Yeah.
But as soon as we start talking about their problem, they're like,
I know what you're saying.
They're like, oh, that's really interesting. I didn't even think about that, right? And that happens every day when I'm at like a conference or something like that, like the one I was in Atlanta. So
I would
really
imagine,
cool.
is it
It's
like,
really cool.
forgive me if this offends anyone, that like you go, like you ever like happened upon a furry convention?
like simultaneously in the same hotel.
Like you go to the wrong ballroom
You
and you're
walk
like,
in.
this is not mine.
Yeah, you're like,
Take a step out. Is it like when you walk into wherever you guys have your conference that you come up behind somebody? People aren't speaking necessarily the same language, but what you guys are discussing and the language with which you discuss it is like,
Yeah.
and they just like do like
Yeah, they just slowly back away.
like the Homer disappearing into the hedge.
No, that'll happen all the time, right? Because we do the math beers. So like after the conference, we go out, we're grabbing beers, we're getting food together or something, and like this is when like honestly some of
I
like
can see you guys just getting excited.
yeah, this is like when
about
some
concepts.
of the best in real work happens,
Yeah.
right? It's like it's shared over a couple of beers when you're just sitting there and you're like, this is what we should do. This is the way to solve this problem. And people will come up, they can like hear us talking, and they're like, yo, what the hell y'all talking about over here? Like,
Yeah.
This is crazy, man. Yeah, it happens on a regular basis. They walk into a situation that they're just totally unfamiliar.
There you go. You're into Star Trek. Is that that's what's happening here?
You guys are just a bunch of nerds,
You're
right?
Trekkies.
Like, well, yeah. I guess we're just a bunch of nerds, man. I get it.
Well, you know what? This world needs more nerds. And as we keep evolving with AI, and what's also exciting is seeing, a push back into trades and some of these things and different skills. But I am always fascinated by people with such big brains that, when you said a puzzle, that was a profound statement to me because math is daunting and as described, it is art. Mm-hmm. And so I've always had respect for what you do and obviously who you are because you're family, but much the same. It is really impressive, and it's just like I have a lot of really cool friends that do a lot of really cool shit that I will never be able to do what they do. I'll never be dragging my knee around Barber here. I'll never, you name it, but you're doing that in such a way that I'm like, it's so cool to know such high level smart motherfuckers.
I mean, it's cool, man. I appreciate that. I mean, it does mean a lot, right? To get like these kinds of affirmations that like there are people that think this is cool because I'm invested in this for the reasons that like I sincerely hope that the things that we do and the things that we work on can truly contribute something to like better society. So, we're not trying to create an AI for some unknown reason. We're trying to create AI to like help us with our energy problems, help us with our climate problems, help us with our societal problems. How do we help people? That's the genuine motivation. So we need these kinds of affirmations and that motivation. So I do really appreciate
Here
that.
for it. With that, and in the same line, what does the future look like? Like if you were like, if I could set some goals, things that I want to really do in my community and in the world I live in, what is something that is a realistic goal that like maybe high or lofty, but you're like, I think I can get there?
For me personally, that I'm looking towards?
In your math.
Yeah. I mean, I want to make a contribution in terms of like a method that is viewed.
Does it get named the Zach Gray method?
Oh God, I hope not. I don't know. I don't want anything named after me. Naming
is that a thing in math?
It's a thing, and it's kind of like an antiquated thing, right? Like you name these methods after people, but it makes the method itself less accessible because it's not.
This is the Jaden. We're using the Jaden method.
Yeah, you're like, here's Krylov's method, and you're like, who the fuck is Krylov? Right? If you're not in that world, you have no idea. So you should like name it a method. Like, here's the method of how to do X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
And so hopefully it never gets named after me. Hopefully it names itself to like an analysis of shapes.
Right.
So I start to like name problems. I call them like an explanatory binary classification, right? So how can we provide more interpretation to method? But if there's anything I can do, right, like that's the end goal in science, is like I really do want to make some kind of contribution that has a profound and impact on technology and science in a whole. I mean, that's a kind of grandiose goal, of course, but that's the idea.
And where would those waves, what would that implicate?
I'm hoping that it has big implications on like energy and on the study of just the planet in general, right? Like we have to be able to measure the planet more precisely to make the most accurate assessment about what's happening and what's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't need to be predicated anymore on anybody's hypothesis of what is or isn't happening. And I'm not interested in really being part of that discussion because the planet will speak for itself, right? So all we need to really be able to do is to be able to measure these effects in the most accurate way possible. The other thing we need to be able to do is to provide people with a resource that a private industry won't otherwise provide. There's a downfall to privatizing like the energy industry that could drive cost for American citizens in a very bad way. So how can we innovate for Americans to provide cleaner, better energy technology? That seems huge to me, right? So like a facet of that is looking at wind energy technology, and it's not supposed to be an end-all, be-all solution, but it is absolutely part of the solution for the country.
But what about the birds, man?
And like consideration of ecologies, consideration of people. I mean, seriously though, like these have to be factors and dimensions that play into the problem. It's not to be necessarily downplayed. It's just we have an increasing number of people, and we have to provide energy for them.
Yeah.
And if we're going to do that, of course, the scientific approach to that is to try to create the cleanest energy possible, because we don't want to live in a space where we're just constantly creating these greenhouse gas emissions. That if you can do it just as well without doing that, then of course you do it. This is just more optimal in some sense. So, that's the drive. That's the contribution. Like, how can we do innovation in energy? How can we do innovation in measurement of the planet?
I think you're on your way, man.
Well, we're trying to do something.
Yeah, a few more math beers. I think that's the ticket.
That's right.
Well, I
That's
appreciate your time, and fortunately for me and you, we're going to be hanging out for a long time. So this will happen again and again. But this is the time of the show where you get to talk about anything specific that you want to bring attention to, whether it's your socials, whether it's something this is whatever.
Oh,
anything you give a shit about.
Well, that's wonderful, right? So, what do I give a shit about? I care a lot about recently. This is a derivative of what I study anyway, but I care a lot about philosophy. And I find myself regularly kind of reflecting on the state of the world right now, right? Reflecting on people's opinions of one another. And I think that if we're going to do anything right now, curiosity has got to become a bigger part of the discussion. And it has to be truly in the sense of being curious about not living in the way that you're living and trying to understand how and why someone else is living in the way that they are. Because, damn, if we need anything right now, we don't need a technical solution. We don't need a math. We don't need a fucking AI. What we need are people to begin to reconcile their decision making with how other people make decisions. And that only begins with like a curiosity. So I genuinely think that that's...
You want people to have self-awareness?
I want people to be curious about other people. and think about,
Well, nothing would make me happier. I think that is a noble plea for life and sanity. Man, that would be neat for others to give a fuck about others.
And just be curious. Like you don't even have to volunteer, but think about and be curious about how other people think, believe, act. We can't have so much division anymore. Like how do you reconcile that? Well, you approach it with a sense of curiosity. You don't have to agree with what someone is saying and the narrative that they are speaking to you. They're not necessarily trying to convince you of an ideology or a way of thinking. They're just expressing an opinion and a belief structure that they have. And if you're curious,
it is in fact possible to hold two ideas simultaneous.
It is in fact possible to just even dabble and be curious about the way that other people think and the way that other people feel. And I think that that's probably what we need. So
I think that's great. And what he didn't say is he's Trash Panda on Instagram. If you want to go check out some of his builds that he's used this fine math to create in the bike world. But I think that's a lot of fun, and I'm super excited to have you on here again. And at some point, it'll be with our gals, and we'll really mix it up.
There we go.
But until then, guys, thanks for watching, and I hope you learned something. And if you didn't, I don't blame you because it's some high-level math shit that I didn't get either. And so until next time.
Hell yeah.
Cheers, brother.
Thanks for having me.
That was it?
Yeah.
Huh?
Cool, man.
That was fun?
That was fun.
Dang, dude. You're a smart motherfucker.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately, I'm like, I do think